Hello, everyone.
There we go.
I'm very pleased to be here today with such great minds. Okay, so from the name of the panel, you understand what's the topic. If you want to accelerate the growth of your business, international collaboration can be the answer. It can help you improve the performance of your company, improve the products, enhance the skills of your human capital, maybe conquer new markets and win new business. We have here some very interesting startups all the way here from the UK, from different industries. They will share their insights about international collaboration and a bit about their experiences. We also have His Excellency, the UK Ambassador to Bahrain, Mr. Simon Martin. If possible, I will let each one of you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business and what inspired you to get into this field.
Sure. I'm already mic'd up. So my name is Aymeric Teulon. I'm from a company called Inayva Ventures. Inayva developed a technology called Avatar. Avatar enables a user to create a digital representation of themselves from all the data generated by devices the user is wearing, inputs generated by the phone from contextual information, as well as direct data from social media postings to direct inputs on the chatbot. The user can then own and share this digital twin and share it with others to get personalized services in return. We're deploying this in the healthcare sector to enable remote monitoring of patients and also to enable doctors and cardiologists to develop personalized protocols using this data to perform better analysis and prediction of these diseases. Before that, I was in investment banking. What pushed me towards AI, machine learning, and healthcare is a certain curiosity towards technology, but a personal experience that drove me towards healthcare and trying to address issues that just keep growing everywhere in the world. We're deploying our technology in Singapore, in Brazil, in Norway, and hopefully in GCC. And the problems and the problematics that we're addressing seems to be exactly the same, no matter where you go.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Garrott. I'm the International Development Lead for AirSensa, which is a hyperlocal real-time air quality monitoring service. I was formerly a civil servant before that and a banker before that. The reason I think we're key to come into the Bahrain and the GCC is there's a lot of problem with air pollution in this region, but also the solution, we believe, is here. We have in front of us a very young population, very, very skilled, and then we are kind of hoping that with engagement with partners, universities, etc., we can help to kind of push forward a platform of kind of mutual solutions.
Perfect. Something for the air pollution. That's like, it's an emerging industry and it's something the world really needs.
Yeah.
Okay. Shaon, please.
Hi, I'm Shaon Talukder. I'm the CEO of Geotourist, which is a travel technology platform. We're building a platform for visitor guidance and to help visitors to travel from one location to the other using GPS technology and audio guides. So essentially, we're a bit like the YouTube of audio guides, where people can find stories in any location in the world, left by organizations, local experts, local guides, museums, just to make it easy for people to get enhanced experiences, to learn the stories of each destination from the people who know it best. I started off as a pharmacist. I did that for 10 years and then went into set up a property business. So I've had a bit of an entrepreneurial experiment, which went okay. And then I became an accidental tourist. So I was traveling and had a bad experience, and that inspired me to try and change how people access information when they're traveling and make it much more accessible. So yeah, and it seems that Bahrain is a very interesting destination. I hadn't known about the Tree of Life before, so that was interesting, and I had the pleasure to be taken around by the Ministry of Tourism to the old fort. And that was very beautiful sunset. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the country as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrian Sutton. I'm founder and MD of Vortex IoT. So we're an Internet of Things company which is focused on delivering and designing sensors and mesh networks for harsh environments where power source is often difficult to tap into, and the artificial intelligence and data integrity or the security of the data we generate is critical to operations. So in short, we work with oil and gas and metal and mining type industries. So that's where the harshness of the working environment comes from, and we ruggedize and add some special sauce into our products to enable them to stand up to these conditions. Prior to setting up Vortex, I spent 10 years as a management consultant. So delivering pretty large-scale programs of change across UK and Europe into local authority and manufacturing type industries.
Yeah, thanks, Heba. So Simon Martin, you've already introduced me. Thank you very much. I'm the British ambassador. My own background is I'm actually an industrial economist. I spent some time in the private sector as well as in diplomacy. My job is to find imaginative ways to build on the extraordinary level of interaction that we have between Britain and Bahrain in so many different fields, and try to synthesize this with the developments that we see here, particularly those being driven by the EDB and the government to diversify and modernize the economy. Governments are often seen as being rather sort of slow-moving, but it might just be worth mentioning that my government has just put out a new industrial strategy. In the days of Mrs. Thatcher, we wouldn't have had one of those, but we do. And the 4 key challenges that they've identified are that we will have to face in the coming years are AI and the advent of AI and the 4th industrial revolution, mobility, an aging population, and climate change. And I think all of those are represented in one way or another by the British companies that we've got here. So it almost sounds as if we did it on purpose. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, very interesting and diverse industries. So how does the UK Department of International Trade facilitate like startups collaboration with the MENA region in general? Are there like certain rules or certain things that can facilitate that?
Yeah, well, the answer is that the government, as represented by the Department of International Trade, is responsible for finding ways of developing new economic relationships. And of course, we have some target sectors that you might expect, like oil and gas, defense, environmental, and so on. But we also recognize that there is a sea change going on in this part of the world, with a new focus on entrepreneurship, on the private sector, on finding alternative ways of funding government, which involves taxes generally, reducing the size of the private sector, and creating opportunities for young people to own their own businesses and manage their own destiny. But of course, there's nothing new about in this part of the world. The same applies in Britain and most other countries. So our concern is to try and find ways of getting synergy between companies and the startup culture in the UK and here. Much of it happens by itself. Governments aren't very good at connecting innovative, fleet-footed young companies, but we can try. So, for example, it was the initiative of my team to suggest that we had a group of companies from the UK, some of whom we see here, come out for this particular event. But also, we have encouraged and celebrated a number of companies to set up in the new FinTech Bay, EDB's FinTech Bay, who are already becoming active both here, and we are now exploring opportunities for them in other GCC markets. We're also going to have a major inbound mission to the Innovate Finance Conference in the City of London at the end of next month. So these are ways in which governments can try to help that interaction, but we're not we're not proud enough to think that it's all about governance. We just try to facilitate.
So maybe we can listen to one of the startup founders. Adrian, how do you think we can translate the long-standing ties we have with the UK into innovation and exchange in talent?
Yeah, I think, well, events like this one is just a perfect example, you know. So our arrival, as the ambassador just said, into this event is facilitated by UK Gov, and these type of events are just so important for us. I've been on several trade missions with the UKDIT team over the last couple of years. We've now got an office in Singapore. That's facilitated really by those early introductions. You know, getting to understand the market, getting to know the market is so critical. And as a startup, you know, that's sometimes out of reach for you from a financial perspective, or from where do I start? So we get really we get access to an unbelievable amount of information and sort of immersion into those local economies and territories, and that's helped our business no end. If you look at the technologies that we work with, actually don't respect boundaries. So sometimes as a business we've got to respect our software and the innovations that we have, and actually maintain focus, but actually break into new territories much earlier than we would have thought. And I think these type of events and the interaction that we have with the local community and the facilitation that we can get through the likes of EDB and our connectivity to UKDIT is really, really positive for us.
Okay, maybe Shaon, you can share with us some of the international collaboration experiences that helped you grow your business.
So we're already in 6 continents, which is great. We've had partnerships in various parts of the world, like in America, Australia, and some stuff in Asia. So what we've learned is that business culture is different everywhere. So some places are obviously easier. The market size is obviously a big factor in terms of strategic choosing of where you'd like to set up. And facilitation of business. So my experience of coming to Bahrain so far has been very, very positive. You know, there are neighboring regions who, you know, it's not as easy, the incentives are maybe not as good, but actually the culture of business is the thing that will actually drive the confidence of international businesses to actually visit and explore and actually try and trade with the businesses. So the experience has actually been very, very good compared to our other international experiences as well. So it's, you know, like I said, we've got partnerships in America, we've got some in Asia, and it seems that the Bahrain government is very keen to do business with international markets, and you know, I think the UK you know, can really put a foothold here. So,
Very
yeah.
glad to hear that. Nicholas, I'll ask you the same question since this is the theme of the panel.
I mean, I kind of intimated before, I'm an economist. I was a policy advisor in a former role, and I've just been incredibly impressed with the whole Team Bahrain ethos since I've been here. The EDB is doing absolutely sterling work. I kind of look at it as if you've set out to kind of form best practice, take the best elements that other countries are doing, and then kind of put together a very, very comprehensive package in a permissive policy environment that's allowing you to deliver you know, an excellent experience. My other experiences with certain other countries, which will remain nameless in case they're watching, is that you know, they either use it as a mechanism to employ the unemployable or to generate revenue, whereas the Bahrain government approach, which is to essentially facilitate the growth of business in whatever capacity that might be, it's far more pragmatic and far-reaching, will have far more beneficial effects for society at large over the longer term. So it's a phenomenal strategic play. So yeah.
Okay, I'll ask you as an AI startup, how do you think international collaboration can help you grow your business, especially with the MENA region?
It is actually critical for us to have an international span, I think. We are currently working with 3 different continents, and not just for the AI, but it's the AI and healthcare. It's just trying to leverage as much expertise and knowledge from various areas into a single platform. So we started in Singapore in the healthcare sector for 2 reasons. The first one is, as a startup, you need to get to market as quickly as possible. And in the healthcare sector, you do have barriers to entry, regulatory ones primarily. So finding a platform that would enable us to go quicker than in our home market was a critical decision, but also working with leader and key expert leaders in a field like in the healthcare sector and in AI was also why we decided to start in Singapore rather than our home market in the UK. Now, as my kind of everyone said so far, Bahrain seems to have a very strong open approach to business, willingness to collaborate, and in a partnership which is extremely positive. So for us, the GCC in general is clearly a very strong focus for our development, but Bahrain seems to be a very excellent platform to start with, I have to say.
Okay, so I think they are interested in collaboration with the MENA region, and I bet the MENA region is interested in collaborating with them as well. So what are the frameworks that people, or what's the process that they can go through to collaborate with startups like those in the UK?
Well, as I say, it's something that the governments shy away from dictating. But the best way to see it is in sectoral collaboration. And as we see more and more really impressive startups in Bahrain, both entirely Bahraini and with foreign involvement, then what we can do is connect to companies in the UK, but also to other British companies who are already active in the Gulf. We, for example, have 5,000 British companies represented in Dubai, which sadly for Bahrain is the place that people tend to go to first. But only around a quarter of those are active elsewhere in the Gulf. So we have a big target group of companies, British companies who are already present and active in the region whom we can attract here. So that's the best way of doing it. But it's more about actually helping to share the experience and the expertise that in some areas the UK is slightly ahead with, in order to create this vibrant sector here, so that we will then naturally invite and attract more companies to come to Bahrain. The government is doing a fantastic job in this. There's still further ways to go in terms of ease of doing business, and as the British government, we can work with our hosts here to identify and work on ways of improving that still further. I think it's really important to note that in this part of the world there's a lot of competition. Bahrain is very keen to stay ahead of the competition and be flexible. That's really what Bahrain has as its USP. We recognize that, and I know you are going to talk to me about Brexit anyway, Heba, but you know, when the UK leaves the European Union, we will both need and want to be even more active and to build on the rich, deep and valuable relationships we have with traditional partners in many parts of the world, nowhere more so than the Gulf. It's going to be a really, really exciting time, I'm glad to say, to be representing Britain in this part of the world, and you will see a lot more determination, a lot more activity, and dare I say it, even some resources behind it, which is not something that the British government often promises, in order to promote that.
Can I also add, you mentioned the kind of what frameworks there are. I think the critical thing is for any MENA region businesses who are looking at the UK is that the UK is the most open of the major global economies. Despite what kind of people might think about Brexit and things like that, the direction of travel is only to become more open and have the ease of doing business to increase. So it's kind of, given that market entry is exceptionally easy into the UK compared to our European competitors especially, you know, there's less kind of focus on the frameworks and more on the kind of culture of business. And when you've got things like the City of London, which is kind of the world's largest capital market and foreign currency clearing area, the language, et cetera, you know, the kind of standardized framework approach hasn't really been spoken about as much as it probably could have been. But you know, the UK itself is incredibly attractive as a location.
Thank you. So maybe I'd ask on behalf of the Bahrain government, what do you think the government should do to attract companies like you to stay in Bahrain and run their business here?
I think the Bahraini government, through events like this, not to repeat my last question, is actually doing all it can, you know. And just speaking to the ambassador this afternoon as well, very deep relationships between Bahrain and the UK, and those are always great starting points, you know. So we're actually not strangers. We're not a long, we're a 6-hour flight away. There's lots of what's in the industrial strategy is likely to be in the Gulf's and Bahrain's industrial strategy for what their changing economy looks like. You know, we're a hive of innovation, but actually, once we arrive in the market, you know, the innovation doesn't actually have to stop with the product. The innovation needs to then extend into the type of relationships you have, and we sought to do that with the relationships. So, for example, in Singapore, another nation where the UK had very strong and historical links. We've got a really good partnership, but that partnership is now being bolstered by exchange, where we've got some graduates, they've got some graduates, and we begin to swap them. You know, they'll do 3 months in the UK, and our graduates are going over there for 3 months. So it's about creating not necessarily the framework, but like the environment, okay? Because you know, as a founder of a business and an entrepreneur, what I don't lack is drive and will, and once you get a sniff of opportunity, then, you know, my radar's pretty sensitive. So if we can then begin to start and structure conversations where we can see value-driven relationships, well, let's try and invest in that, not for one POC or 1 3-month, 6-month period. Let's actually show, commit to, and you know, the best partnerships are built on trust, and that trust becomes two-way. So I always try to look at the opportunities in what's in it for both parties, and where can we take this for 2, 3, 4 years, and let's just create the environment for that. And what the conversations I've had to date, and in the last 3 days, yes, we're speed dating, but we really got to sort of where we want to be as individual customers or partners, and that's the session that we had with the Bahrain airport company laid on by Unbound on Tuesday was just, you know, it's just phenomenal. You know, they're opening up the doors, and at the same time they're wanting to listen. So you can see that's a relationship that has the basis for innovation, not only in product, but in knowledge transfer, in the way we want to work with each other, and then there's value from that.
So do you think this can help your business overcome some challenges it's currently facing?
So we're a 2-year business, and we've got double and treble digit growth, and we know over the next year that we'll do a treble digit growth again if we carry on kicking the numbers like we are. So our challenges are good challenges, yeah. And they're really ones that, yes, Bahrain can help with, but it comes back to how do we make those relationships which are two-way. If we're delivering value into a Bahrain opportunity, and there's value to our Bahraini customer, then it's not overcoming a challenge that we're doing. We're actually just facilitating growth and innovation on both sides.
Maybe I can ask Shaon, since you are in the tourism industry, what do you think governments should do to enhance the industry and make it grow? If you know, Bahrain tourism is one of the main goals in the Bahrain strategy. They want to capitalize on tourism. So maybe you can share with us how they can improve the sector.
Sure. I think Bahrain has an amazing opportunity. I think the one thing that I've seen wherever I've traveled, if you can get your identity correct and understand what the brand of Bahrain represents, then you will have your own unique selling, point. So don't copy anyone else. There's things here that people will travel for. I think it's just more about awareness. I think what struck me when I've come to Bahrain is the openness and just the culture here. It seems to be quite a relaxed culture. There's not that many crowds, so you actually have an amazing opportunity because people who like to travel, they have this vision of traveling to places where they have beautiful landscapes and these monuments and things like that. But when they actually show up, they're just crowded by people, and it's not a very pleasant experience. Whereas in Bahrain, it feels like there's you can just travel at your own leisure and get a really, really good experience. So that's actually one of the unique selling points to me, and also the fact that you're close to a lot of European countries. So I think going forward, I would look at that as a future market. I know your biggest market here currently is inbound Saudi Arabians. About 9 million people every year, which is a great market to have. But I mean, I've also just come back from Saudi as well recently. And they're obviously going through their own transformation, as we all know about Vision 2030, and they're relaxing a lot of their facility or amenities in the country, and providing more leisure activities for the locals, and for them to actually go out and enjoy and do things. So a lot of the reasons why people may travel to Bahrain might be changing. But also the other thing that they're doing as a longer term play is that they're considering opening up to a wider international market. So there's a good opportunity that actually more people will be traveling to this region anyway. So just through that, there's an opportunity for people to actually see Bahrain on the map right next door to it. So if you position yourself your product now and give yourself some unique identity, then naturally you'll get some overflow from that.
That's great. Maybe I can ask you, since there is a revolution in artificial intelligence. So how do you expect it's going to be in next 10 years?
It's interesting because obviously 5 years ago, AI was about a computer defeating a player at chess or whatever. And then 2 years ago, it was a computer defeating a champion at Go, which is a lot more complex. And then fast forward 2 years, we have computers that can recognize images, faces, voice within a crowd. And then people started to be a little bit overwhelmed about this new wave of technology that they felt like couldn't really control. Today everyone's focused on IoT and artificial intelligence leveraging this. I think this is obviously the start of it, and we're shifting into what now people call the Internet of Everything. And how do you liaise all this information in something that is sensible for everyone? The next 10 years are going to be really about this. It's like, what do you make of all this information? And you convert this data into knowledge rather than just information. There will be a huge shift, and to me it's almost a parallel would be when the internet started, and once the mobile phone started incorporating the internet, the power of this technology all of a sudden exploded. And the AI is probably around that phase as well. It's like we haven't seen really the full power of it. We found some applications, but ultimately there will be a lot of different ways that can be explored. We're obviously focusing on the healthcare, thinking that it can be a very strong benefit to solve a serious issue with aging population and lifestyle-related diseases, but this is just the beginning.
Nick, your industry is kind of unique, air pollution. So what opportunities do you find in the MENA region? And I think awareness is much better about it.
Yes, I mean, to be a little bit cynical, air pollution is the new smoking. Government and various industrial bodies have known that it's been an issue for many years. The public have been largely ignorant or didn't realize how big a problem it was. The Volkswagen scandal kind of blew everything into stark relief. People are now wanting to know how bad the problem is and know what's going to be done about it. The problem is currently data provision is substandard. People know there's an issue. They kind of have these very high cost scientific sensors scattered around the place, but they're not really getting a real-time, hyper-local experience like they're used to from the rest of the Internet of Things and the rest of the way technology has gone. So, in fact, the air pollution space is probably 5-10 years behind where the rest of the technological space is and where people expect it to be. So there's an incredible policy drive to kind of get better data in, and that's the critical difference to, a lot of people want the solution. Well, you can't give a good solution unless you've got good data to underpin the policy choices you make as a government or as a business. So, for instance, the automotive, the residential, the real estate sectors, they're all interested in increasing their data pools to then use the smart AIs or whatever they want on the back end to kind of go through that data and find solutions for these problems. But yeah, I would say it is a critical issue, and it does need addressing, and someone's going to have to address it, and it might as well be AirSensa. Shameless plug. But,
Adrian, we were talking about co-creation. This is the slogan or the buzzword in your company. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we work in IoT, and there's no one company in IoT that does the full end-to-end solution. It's impossible, and it would also amount to potentially suicidal sort of vendor lock-in for some of the big players who do so. So we talk about collaboration, and collaboration just feels to become like an overused word. So we talk more about co-creation. In that we realize that we're not the full end-to-end solution. We never will be. But co-creation, where we've had some really good conversations out here. We've got some experts in data and analytics. That's great. We'll work with you, because what we do as a business is generate data. We use the term, we put light where previously there was dark, so kind of some fourth industrial revolution Edison where. So our strapline is making the physical digital, but in order to actually live up to our strapline, we need to actually partner for success, and that comes through co-creation. So part of what I'm interested in is not just coming here and saying, okay, what are the opportunities for us, and then just run at them. It's like, okay, how do I establish a partner framework or a partner ecosystem with complementary outfits in Bahrain, the Gulf, that allow us to do business, but do it in a co-creative way.
You were talking about the integration of human capital as well. Remember, we were talking before the panel about the integration of human capital as well.
Yeah, exactly. And if you then begin to exchange ideas, knowledge transfer, and actually do those exchange programs, you're doing co-creation on a daily basis, not just on a sort of a paper basis. It actually needs to mean something, and you need to see the outputs from that. So we invest heavily in that, because we have to realize that we're not going to go into a Ramco and say, we're the solution you've been looking for all these years. We're not going to go to Babco and say, Dana, this is your eureka moment. Aren't you glad we turned up? We can turn up and we can go through a solution, but it's going to take human capital on both sides with local partners and those working co-creatively. So anyone in the audience who wants to co-create on IoT, we're outside for a few hours more.
Okay, we can talk about the tourism industry since we were talking about artificial intelligence, how it will change in 10 years. Tourism was first, I think, kiosks and tours, and now it's apps, and it's very different. So how do you expect it in 10 years?
So there's a lot more around experience. So there's lots of work being done in AR and VR. Our position, it's all about stories. So we position ourselves as a global storytelling platform because we believe that's the thing that brings things to life. So, you could be walking past a statue. It's the story that the statue will then tell you that brings it to life, not the fact that it's just a statue. Because with the best will in the world, people want to know why it's significant, why it's important, why it's interesting. And if you can get that right, that's what will inspire people to come. And the people who know those stories, and they're the ones that can then share those stories with their friends and families through social media. And then ultimately what happens is that they become the ambassadors that then bring the next lot of visitors. And, people then, they may be people who can do business here as well. So by promoting tourism, you actually promote a lot more than just that. And I think one of the other important things is developing more facilities for the local residents, because making it a good place to live is actually quite important to what we were talking about earlier on. Most of the companies that have come out here are thinking quite long term. So when you think long term, you think about, is it a good place to live? Is it somewhere that you would consider settling down? So if it ticks a lot of the boxes, then actually it's not a place where you would think, okay, we're going to go in and out for, within a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, or have a 5-year plan and then out. Actually, you think a lot longer term and actually look at building, and I think that's probably the way forward for most companies and for the government in terms of the strategy.
Maybe we can take it a bit generally, Your Excellency. There is a very strong partnership between the UK and Bahrain on so many levels. But are there undiscovered areas of maybe investment or partnership that maybe people can utilize? Maybe we can bring up some ideas here.
I mean, that's one of the really exciting aspects of the field that we're talking about. There are many traditional British companies who are very well known here, brands. Some people tell me, oh, what's happened to GKN and GEC and so on, and companies that we used to know in the 50s. The fact is that every economy develops. Many of those companies still exist. They're owned by other companies. They've got different names. But the key thing is the UK economy is developing a continuous production line of new companies. We are home to 17 of the first unicorns, the first startups that have become billion-dollar companies. And there is absolutely no reason that some of the companies that we are speaking to, talking about here in Bahrain, could not be the first Gulf unicorn. No, seriously. And that is the exciting thing. Of course, I would very much like that first unicorn to have a very large British involvement. It doesn't have to be British itself. And so, whereas you can't say it's definitely in this area, it's definitely in that area, it is this collaborative ecosystem which is developing here, but is naturally looking to Britain for as Nick was saying, looking to London for guidance and opportunity, which gives me a great deal of hope that we will see this going from strength to strength, as well as in the traditional areas where we are already very strong.
Thank you very much. Our time is up. So if you have any further questions, you can approach here our incredible startup owners and, of course, the ambassador. I hope you enjoyed this panel, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much, and thank you for our panelists.